I watched my younger brother Garrett's hands shake uncontrollably as the bailiffs guided him to the defendant's table. His confident smirk had vanished, replaced by the pale, sweaty terror of someone who finally understood the consequences of their actions. 5 days ago at our family barbecue, he had snatched my rescue inhaler from my desperate grasp, while I fought for every breath. His cruel laughter still echoed in my mind as he taunted me with those words that would haunt us both forever. "I don't have asthma, so you're not allowed to have it either." Then came his final vicious blow. "Already gasping loser." I had stayed silent, then collapsing to my knees as my world turned dark. But today, everything would change. Judge Hernandez's gavel echoed through the packed courtroom as I prepared to testify against my own brother for attempted murder. 5 days earlier, our backyard had been filled with the cheerful chaos of a family celebration. Dad had just received his promotion to regional sales manager, and Mom insisted on hosting a barbecue to mark the occasion. The June afternoon was perfect for an outdoor gathering with golden sunlight filtering through the oak trees that bordered our property in suburban Cleveland. Uncle Todd had driven up from Phoenix with his 16-year-old daughter Jessica, while neighbors and family friends filled the deck chairs and picnic tables scattered across our manicured lawn. I had been looking forward to sharing some exciting news about my graduate research at Case Western Reserve University. As a biomedical engineering student specializing in respiratory therapy devices, I was on the verge of a breakthrough that could revolutionize emergency asthma treatment. My thesis advisor, Professor Williams, had encouraged me to present my preliminary findings to the family, knowing how proud they were of my academic achievements. But from the moment I began setting up my laptop and presentation materials on the patio table, I could feel Garrett's resentful glare burning into my back. At 19, my younger brother had always struggled with the comparison between us. While I excelled academically, he barely maintained passing grades at Ohio State, spending more time at fraternity parties than in lecture halls. Dad's constant praise for my research accomplishments only deepened the chasm between us. "Another one of Porter's boring science lectures," Garrett muttered to our cousin Jessica as I connected my laptop to the outdoor projector Dad had borrowed from his office. "Watch him show off like he's some kind of genius." I chose to ignore his comments, focusing instead on the genuine enthusiasm from Uncle Todd, who worked as a paramedic and understood the medical significance of my work. As I began explaining how current inhaler technology could fail during critical moments, leaving patients vulnerable to fatal asthma attacks, several relatives leaned forward with genuine interest. The problem with existing rescue inhalers. I explained clicking through slides showing respiratory distress statistics is that they rely on a single delivery mechanism. If that mechanism is compromised through damage theft or deliberate interference, patients have no backup options during life-threatening emergencies. My severe asthma had developed following a bout of pneumonia when I was 8 years old. What started as a simple respiratory infection had permanently damaged my lung function, leaving me dependent on a complex regimen of daily medications and emergency rescue inhalers. The condition had shaped my entire academic focus, driving me toward research that could prevent other families from experiencing the terror of watching a loved one struggle to breathe. Throughout my presentation, Garrett's snide comments grew increasingly bitter. He made sarcastic remarks about my dramatic medical condition, suggesting I exaggerated my symptoms for attention and sympathy. When Dad praised my innovative approach to solving real-world medical problems, Garrett's jaw clenched with barely contained rage. The afternoon heat, combined with pollen from freshly cut grass and smoke from Dad's charcoal grill, began triggering the familiar tightness in my chest that warned of an approaching asthma attack. I excused myself from the conversation circle and headed toward the house to retrieve my rescue inhaler from my jacket pocket. That's when Garrett struck. As I reached for the small blue device that represented my lifeline during respiratory emergencies, my brother's hand shot out like a striking snake. He snatched the inhaler from my fingers and held it high above his head, his 6'2" frame giving him a clear advantage over my more modest height. "What are you doing?" I gasped, feeling my airways beginning to constrict, as panic amplified my breathing difficulties. "I don't have asthma," Garrett declared loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear, "so you're not allowed to have it either." At first, several family members chuckled, assuming this was typical sibling roughhousing. Uncle Todd looked up from his conversation with Dad, his paramedic instincts beginning to register concern as he noticed my increasingly labored breathing. "Garrett, give it back!" I wheezed, reaching desperately for the inhaler as my brother continued holding it just beyond my grasp. "Already gasping, loser!" He laughed, his voice dripping with years of accumulated resentment and jealousy. My chest felt like someone was tightening steel bands around my ribcage. Each breath became a monumental effort as my airways continued constricting. I could feel my lips beginning to turn blue as oxygen levels in my bloodstream dropped to dangerous levels. "Please," I begged, no longer caring about dignity or family dynamics as survival instinct took over. Uncle Todd's medical training kicked in as he recognized the severity of my distress. He launched himself across the patio, tackling Garrett with enough force to send them both tumbling onto the wooden deck. The inhaler clattered across the boards as Todd scrambled to retrieve it. "Call 911 now!" Todd shouted as he pressed the inhaler into my trembling hands. I triggered the device with desperate urgency, feeling the bronchodilator medication beginning its race against time to reopen my constricted airways. But my oxygen saturation had already dropped to critical levels. The world around me began fading to gray as Uncle Todd's voice seemed to come from very far away. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of emergency room procedures and medical monitoring. Paramedics had arrived within minutes of Uncle Todd's call, but my condition required immediate hospitalization for observation and treatment. Dr. Chen, the emergency medicine physician who treated me later, explained that another minute or two without my rescue medication could have resulted in complete respiratory failure and potential brain damage from oxygen deprivation. While I recovered in the hospital bed connected to oxygen monitors and IV lines, I overheard Uncle Todd having a heated conversation with my parents in the hallway outside my room. "This wasn't some harmless prank," Todd's voice carried clearly through the partially open door. "Garrett deliberately withheld life-saving medication from his brother during a medical emergency. In my professional opinion, this constitutes assault with a deadly weapon." "He's just jealous of Porter's success," Mom replied defensively. "You know how competitive siblings can be." "Competitive?" Todd's voice rose with incredulous anger. "Susan, your son nearly died today because Garrett decided to play God with his brother's medical condition. This goes way beyond normal sibling rivalry." What I didn't know until much later was that Uncle Todd had remained at the barbecue after my ambulance departure, using his phone to discreetly record a conversation between Garrett and our cousin Jessica. In that recording, which would later become crucial evidence, Garrett bragged about finally putting Porter in his place and showing him what it feels like to be powerless. Most chilling of all was Garrett's final comment on that recording. "Did you see how scared he looked? I should have waited longer before letting Uncle Todd get the inhaler. Maybe next time Porter won't be so lucky." 3 days after my hospitalization, Uncle Todd made a decision that would change our family forever. He took his secret recording directly to the Cleveland Police Department, specifically requesting to speak with someone who specialized in medical assault cases. Detective Maria Santos, a 12-year veteran of the force who had lost her own younger brother to a fatal asthma attack during childhood, agreed to review the evidence. Detective Santos listened to Todd's recording with growing alarm. As someone who understood the devastating consequences of delayed asthma treatment, she immediately recognized the criminal nature of Garrett's actions. The deliberate withholding of life-saving medication combined with Garrett's expressed intent to harm me, and his lack of remorse painted a clear picture of aggravated assault with potential attempted murder charges. "Mr. Valdez," she told Uncle Todd, using his last name, This recording provides evidence of premeditation and intent to cause serious bodily harm. Your nephew Porter nearly lost his life, and your other nephew Garrett has essentially confessed to enjoying the experience and planning to repeat it. The investigation moved swiftly as Detective Santos interviewed witnesses from the barbecue. Several relatives confirmed seeing Garrett deliberately prevent me from accessing my medication, while I clearly suffered respiratory distress. Their statements corroborated the timeline and circumstances that transformed what might have been dismissed as a family dispute into a serious criminal matter. Dr. Amanda Richardson, my longtime pulmonologist, provided crucial expert testimony about the medical reality of my condition. She explained to investigators how my particular type of severe asthma could progress from manageable symptoms to life-threatening respiratory failure within minutes when trigger factors combined with medication delays. Porter's oxygen saturation when he arrived at the emergency room was 68%, Dr. Richardson reported. Normal levels range from 95 to 100%. At 68%, he was experiencing severe hypoxemia that could have caused permanent brain damage or cardiac arrest within minutes. Meanwhile, I struggled with the decision of whether to pursue criminal charges against my own brother. The pressure from my parents to keep this within the family was immense and emotionally exhausting. They had already hired an expensive attorney for Garrett and were draining resources that had been earmarked for my doctoral program expenses. My girlfriend Sarah, a nursing student at Case Western Reserve University's medical school, helped me understand the broader implications of Garrett's actions. During one of our late-night conversations in my apartment near campus, she posed a question that cut through my family loyalty confusion. "Porter, what if Garrett does this to someone else?" Sarah asked, her brown eyes serious with concern. "What if he decides another person with a disability or medical condition deserves to suffer? Can you live with yourself knowing you had the chance to stop him and chose family protection instead?" Her words forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. Garrett's behavior wasn't limited to sibling rivalry. Detective Santos had begun uncovering evidence of a broader pattern of cruel behavior toward vulnerable individuals. Social media posts going back several years showed Garrett mocking classmates with various disabilities and medical conditions, referring to them as weak and suggesting they deserved their suffering. The investigation took a shocking turn when Detective Santos discovered that Garrett had been systematically stealing my prescription inhalers for months before the barbecue incident. Pharmacy records showed that I had been refilling my prescriptions more frequently than medically necessary, while Garrett's bank account revealed cash deposits that coincided with those refill dates. "Your brother was selling your rescue inhalers to other students," Detective Santos explained during our interview at the police station. "He was essentially running a black market operation in life-saving medications while leaving you with expired backup devices that might have failed during an actual emergency." This revelation transformed my understanding of the barbecue attack from an impulsive act of cruelty to a calculated escalation of ongoing endangerment. Garrett hadn't just threatened my life once, he had been systematically undermining my medical safety for months while profiting from my vulnerability. Professor Williams, my thesis advisor, provided additional testimony about Garrett's pattern of harassment on campus. He had witnessed several instances where Garrett showed up at my research laboratory, making threatening comments about my health and attempting to interfere with my academic work. Garrett told me that Porter's asthma was a convenient excuse for getting special treatment, Professor Williams reported. He said Porter didn't deserve success because his medical condition gave him an unfair advantage through disability accommodations. District Attorney James Fletcher recognized the potential impact of prosecuting this case. As someone running for re-election on a platform of protecting vulnerable citizens, he saw an opportunity to send a strong message about medical endangerment and disability rights violations. "This case represents more than sibling rivalry gone wrong," District Attorney Fletcher announced at a press conference. Mr. Garrett Morrison's actions constitute deliberate, premeditated assault on an individual whose medical condition made him particularly vulnerable to serious harm or death. The charges filed against Garrett were severe aggravated assault, reckless endangerment theft of prescription medications, and attempted murder. Each charge carried significant prison time, and the combination could result in decades behind bars if convicted on all counts. Local asthma advocacy groups rallied behind my case, recognizing its potential to establish important legal precedents for protecting individuals with respiratory conditions from deliberate medical endangerment. The Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America issued a statement supporting the prosecution and highlighting the broader issue of medication theft and family abuse of disabled individuals. As media attention grew, my parents' response became increasingly disappointing. Instead of acknowledging the severity of Garrett's actions or expressing concern for my well-being, they focused entirely on protecting their younger son from consequences. They drained my college fund to pay for Garrett's legal defense, then lied to me about financial aid availability for completing my doctoral program. The final straw came when I discovered they had been secretly meeting with Garrett's attorney to discuss strategies for portraying me as a vindictive older brother seeking revenge through false accusations. Their betrayal cut deeper than Garrett's physical attack because it represented a conscious choice to sacrifice my safety and future for his protection. Uncle Todd stepped into the void left by my parents' abandonment, offering both emotional support and financial assistance for my education. His decision to record Garrett's confession and report it to police had been motivated by genuine concern for my safety rather than any desire to destroy our family. Porter. I've seen too many preventable deaths in my career as a paramedic, Todd explained during one of our conversations at his hotel near downtown Cleveland. When someone deliberately withholds medical care from a vulnerable person, they're committing attempted murder. Your parents can choose to enable Garrett's behavior, but I won't be complicit in covering up a crime that could have killed you. Rachel Morrison. The high-powered defense attorney hired by my parents built her strategy around minimizing Garrett's actions and maximizing attacks on my character. With over 15 years of experience defending clients in high-profile assault cases, Morrison specialized in transforming criminal defendants from perpetrators into victims of circumstances beyond their control. Her approach involved painting the barbecue incident as harmless sibling rivalry that had been blown out of proportion by overzealous law enforcement and opportunistic prosecutors seeking election year publicity. Morrison planned to argue that I had exaggerated my medical condition for sympathy and potential financial gain through civil lawsuits against my own family. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Morrison practiced during her opening statement preparation. What you're witnessing is the tragic result of normal family dynamics being criminalized by a system that doesn't understand the complex relationships between brothers. Judge Patricia Hernandez, a 58-year-old jurist known for her no-nonsense approach to courtroom proceedings, had her own personal connection to asthma cases. Having suffered from severe respiratory problems since childhood, she understood the life-threatening nature of delayed medical treatment in ways that gave her unique insight into the evidence being presented. The prosecution's case preparation involved extensive work with Dr. Richardson to help me practice recounting the traumatic events without triggering anxiety attacks that could compromise my testimony. As someone who had treated me for over a decade, she understood how the stress of legal proceedings could exacerbate my respiratory symptoms. Porter, the jury needs to understand not just the physical danger you faced, but the ongoing psychological impact of having someone you trusted deliberately threaten your life. Dr. Richardson explained during our preparation sessions. Your brother didn't just steal an inhaler. He weaponized your medical vulnerability against you. Morrison's aggressive defense tactics included subpoenaing my complete medical history, dating back to childhood, searching for inconsistencies or evidence that my asthma condition was less severe than claimed. She questioned why I didn't carry multiple rescue inhalers and suggested that any responsible person with my condition would have taken additional precautions against medication loss. The discovery process revealed Morrison's plan to argue that I had deliberately provoked Garrett's actions by showing off my academic achievements and making him feel inadequate within our family dynamic. She intended to claim that my presentation at the barbecue was a calculated attempt to humiliate Garrett in front of relatives, and that his response, while inappropriate, was understandable given the emotional provocation. Detective Santos provided a devastating counterattack to this defense strategy when her investigation uncovered Garrett's internet search history from the weeks leading up to the barbecue. Browser records from his laptop computer revealed multiple searches for "How long can someone survive asthma attack?" "Asthma death statistics," and "symptoms of severe respiratory distress." This evidence demonstrates clear premeditation, Detective Santos testified during pre-trial hearings. Mr. Morrison researched the potential consequences of withholding asthma medication before he actually withheld it from his brother. This wasn't an impulsive act of sibling rivalry. It was a calculated attack on someone he knew was medically vulnerable. The premeditation evidence strengthened the attempted murder charge and undermined Morrison's portrayal of Garrett as someone who simply acted out of momentary emotional distress. The prosecution could now argue that Garrett had spent weeks planning an attack specifically designed to exploit my respiratory vulnerability. Garrett's behavior during court proceedings worked against his defense, despite Morrison's coaching about maintaining a respectful demeanor. He consistently displayed arrogance and entitlement, smirking during serious testimony, and showing obvious contempt for the legal process. Judge Hernandez warned him repeatedly about his disrespectful attitude toward witnesses and court personnel. Dr. Richardson's expert testimony provided the jury with a clear understanding of asthma physiology and the critical importance of immediate medication access during attacks. Using medical illustrations and real-time monitoring equipment, she demonstrated how rapidly my condition could progress from manageable symptoms to life-threatening respiratory failure. When someone experiencing severe asthma is denied access to their rescue medication, Dr. Richardson explained to the jury, every minute of delay increases the risk of permanent disability or death. Mr. Morrison's decision to withhold his brother's inhaler while Porter was clearly in respiratory distress was equivalent to pointing a loaded weapon at someone and pulling the trigger. Emergency room physician Dr. Chen testified about my condition when I arrived at the hospital following the barbecue incident. His testimony included security footage from the hospital showing my blue lips, labored breathing, and the urgent medical interventions required to stabilize my oxygen levels. In my 20 years of emergency medicine, Dr. Chen told the jury, I have seen many preventable deaths from asthma attacks. Mr. Morrison arrived at our facility in critical condition that could have been fatal with even a few more minutes of delayed treatment. Uncle Todd's testimony proved particularly powerful as he described watching me collapse while Garrett continued holding my inhaler beyond reach. As a paramedic with extensive experience in respiratory emergencies, Todd could speak authoritatively about the medical signs he observed and the urgency of the intervention required. I knew Porter was dying. Todd testified, his voice steady but emotionally charged. His lips were blue, his breathing was extremely shallow, and his level of consciousness was declining rapidly. Garrett was holding the one thing that could save his brother's life, and he was enjoying watching Porter suffer. My parents' reluctant testimony damaged Garrett's case further, as they were forced to admit under oath that they had witnessed his refusal to return my inhaler, despite my obvious medical distress. Cross-examination revealed their long history of enabling Garrett's bullying behavior and minimizing the severity of my medical condition. You've described your son, Garrett, as competitive and strong-willed, the prosecutor noted during cross-examination of my mother. Would you also describe deliberately withholding life-saving medication from someone having a medical emergency as competitive behavior? Mom's inability to answer that question directly spoke volumes to the jury about our family's dysfunction and her unwillingness to hold Garrett accountable for potentially deadly actions. The climactic moment of this phase came during Morrison's aggressive cross-examination designed to make me admit that I wasn't really in serious danger during the barbecue incident. Her strategy involved pushing me to acknowledge that I had exaggerated my symptoms or that the attack wasn't as severe as medical records suggested. "Mr. Morrison," she pressed, "isn't it true that you could have simply asked other family members to help you retrieve your inhaler instead of creating this dramatic scene?" The stress of her aggressive questioning combined with the courtroom's poor air circulation and my ongoing anxiety about reliving the attack triggered an unexpected asthma episode right there in the witness box. As I began struggling to breathe, reaching desperately for my rescue inhaler, Garrett's response destroyed any remaining sympathy the jury might have had for him. He laughed. Not quietly or discreetly, but audibly enough that Judge Hernandez, the jury, and spectators in the gallery all heard his amusement at my medical distress. Even Morrison looked shocked by her client's reaction as court officers rushed to provide emergency assistance. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Hernandez declared sharply, "your behavior is completely inappropriate and will be noted in the court record." But the damage to Garrett's case was irreversible. The jury had witnessed firsthand both my genuine medical vulnerability and his callous enjoyment of my suffering. Morrison's aggressive defense strategy had backfired spectacularly, providing the prosecution with the most powerful evidence possible: Garrett's own reaction to seeing me in respiratory distress. The prosecution's systematic presentation of evidence methodically demolished every aspect of Morrison's defense strategy while revealing the full scope of Garrett's dangerous behavior. Dr. Michael Chen took the stand to provide detailed medical testimony about my condition upon arrival at Cleveland General Hospital's emergency department. Mr. Morrison's oxygen saturation was 68% when our medical team first assessed him. Dr. Chen testified consulting the medical charts from that night. For context, anything below 90% constitutes a medical emergency, and levels in the 60s indicate severe life-threatening hypoxemia that can cause permanent brain damage within minutes. The hospital's security footage played for the jury on large monitors showed my desperate struggle to breathe as medical staff worked frantically to stabilize my condition. The visual evidence was far more powerful than any verbal description could have been, allowing jurors to witness the genuine severity of my respiratory distress. Dr. Chen explained the medical timeline that proved how close I had come to irreversible damage or death. Based on Mr. Morrison's condition when he arrived and the rate of deterioration we observed, I can say with medical certainty that another 2 to 3 minutes without treatment could have resulted in cardiac arrest or permanent brain injury from oxygen deprivation. Sarah Martinez, my girlfriend and a nursing student with clinical experience in respiratory care, provided testimony about Garrett's escalating pattern of harassment during the months leading up to the barbecue attack. Her detailed documentation of incidents helped establish that the inhaler theft wasn't an isolated event, but part of a systematic campaign of intimidation. Garrett would show up at Porter's laboratory unannounced, Sarah testified. He would make comments about Porter's fake medical condition and suggest that Porter was using his asthma as an excuse to get special treatment from professors and employers. She described specific incidents where Garrett had followed me to university events, made threatening phone calls late at night, and attempted to sabotage my research equipment by tampering with ventilation systems in the lab, where I conducted experiments on respiratory therapy devices. Professor Williams testified about Garrett's unauthorized visits to university facilities and his attempts to discredit my academic work by spreading false information about my research methods and findings. His testimony established Garrett's pattern of targeting my professional reputation as well as my personal safety. Mr. Garrett Morrison told me that his brother didn't deserve academic success because his medical condition gave him unfair advantages through disability accommodations, Professor Williams reported. He said Porter was gaming the system and that someone needed to level the playing field. The prosecution's technology expert presented digital forensics evidence that painted a disturbing picture of Garrett's online activities and private communications. Deleted text messages recovered from his phone showed conversations with friends where he bragged about controlling me and planning to teach me a lesson I won't forget. Social media analysis revealed years of posts where Garrett mocked people with various disabilities and medical conditions. His Twitter and Instagram accounts contained dozens of cruel comments about classmates who used wheelchairs, hearing aids, or other medical devices, referring to them as weak and suggesting they deserved their difficulties. Dr. Jennifer Liu, a court-appointed psychiatrist who had evaluated Garrett during the pretrial period, testified about her findings regarding his mental state and potential for future violence. Her professional assessment provided disturbing insights into Garrett's psychology and motivations. Mr. Morrison displays characteristics consistent with narcissistic personality disorder combined with antisocial traits, Dr. Liu reported. He shows a complete lack of empathy for others' suffering and actually derives pleasure from causing pain to those he perceives as vulnerable or successful. The psychiatric evaluation revealed that Garrett viewed my medical condition not as a serious health challenge, but as a weakness that he could exploit to assert dominance within our family structure. His resentment of my academic achievements had combined with his personality disorders to create a dangerous individual capable of escalating violence. Financial crimes investigator Detective Kevin Park testified about the broader theft ring that Garrett had organized around prescription medication trafficking. The investigation revealed that he had been stealing and selling not just my inhalers, but also insulin from diabetic students and EpiPens from those with severe allergies. Mr. Morrison was operating a sophisticated black market network targeting life-saving medications from college students across multiple universities in Ohio. Detective Park explained. His profits from these thefts exceeded $12,000 over 8 months, while putting dozens of vulnerable individuals at risk of medical emergencies. The medication theft ring had resulted in several close calls where students nearly died when their stolen devices were replaced with expired or counterfeit products. Garrett's operation demonstrated a complete disregard for human life in pursuit of financial gain from others' medical vulnerabilities. Ashley Thompson, Garrett's former girlfriend from high school, courageously testified about his history of psychological abuse and deliberate endangerment of people with medical conditions. Her testimony revealed that the barbecue attack wasn't his first attempt to harm someone by interfering with their medical care. Garrett once tampered with my meal when he knew I had severe tree nut allergies. Ashley told the jury, her voice trembling with remembered fear. He thought it was funny to watch me use my EpiPen and said I was being dramatic about a little food sensitivity. Her testimony established a clear pattern of behavior where Garrett targeted people's medical vulnerabilities as a form of entertainment and control. The incident with Ashley had occurred 3 years before his attack on me, showing that his dangerous behavior had been escalating over time. Local asthma advocacy groups presented statistical evidence about the broader problem of medication theft and deliberate medical endangerment within families. The Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America's representative testified about similar cases across the country and the urgent need for stronger legal protections. Mr. Morrison's case represents a disturbing trend we're seeing nationwide, the advocacy representative explained. Family members and caregivers are increasingly using medical vulnerabilities as tools of abuse and control, often with fatal consequences. The community impact testimony helped the jury understand that their verdict would send an important message about society's willingness to protect vulnerable individuals from medical abuse, even when that abuse comes from family members who should be providing care and support. The prosecution's most devastating evidence came from an unexpected source, Emma Rodriguez Garrett's current girlfriend, who had secretly recorded him celebrating my hospitalization at a party following the barbecue incident. Her decision to contact prosecutors with video evidence demonstrated the shocking extent of Garrett's lack of remorse. The video showed Garrett reenacting the inhaler theft for entertainment, laughing as he demonstrated how he had held my medication beyond reach while I begged for help. Most damaging of all was his explicit statement that he hoped I would die so he could inherit everything and no longer live in my shadow. "I should have waited longer," Garrett said on the recording, clearly intoxicated, but speaking with unmistakable sincerity. "Maybe if Porter had passed out completely, he would have learned not to show off so much. Next time I'll make sure he really suffers." Emma's betrayal of Garrett's trust provided the prosecution with irrefutable evidence of his true motivations and his complete absence of brotherly love or basic human decency. The video eliminated any possibility that his actions could be explained as momentary anger or misguided sibling rivalry. Emma Rodriguez's decision to secretly record Garrett's celebration of my near-death experience marked the beginning of his complete psychological and legal collapse. Her video evidence revealed the full extent of his sociopathic personality and eliminated any remaining doubt about his guilt or potential for rehabilitation. The recording made at a fraternity party 3 days after my hospitalization showed Garrett surrounded by admiring friends as he bragged about his brilliant plan to humble his arrogant older brother. His casual discussion of attempted murder as entertainment demonstrated a level of callousness that shocked even experienced law enforcement officers. "You should have seen his face when he realized I wasn't going to give it back." Garrett laughed on the video, mimicking my desperate gasping for breath, while his audience cheered. "He was turning blue and everything. I was like, 'Now who's the weak one, genius?'" Emma testified that she had initially found Garrett charming and confident, but gradually became disturbed by his cruel comments about disabled individuals and his obvious resentment toward me. Her decision to record him came after he began bragging about planning additional attacks on vulnerable people as a form of entertainment. Garrett talked about targeting other students with medical conditions. Emma told the jury, her voice steady despite obvious emotional difficulty. He said disabled people were easy marks, who deserved whatever happened to them because they were too weak to fight back. The video evidence also revealed that Garrett had been teaching other fraternity members how to identify and steal medical devices from vulnerable classmates. He provided detailed instructions on recognizing insulin pumps, rescue inhalers, and EpiPens, describing them as valuable items that could be sold for significant profits. Dr. Patricia Stone, the psychiatrist treating me for trauma related to the attack, testified about the severe psychological impact of Garrett's actions on my mental health and daily functioning. Her professional assessment revealed the lasting damage caused by betrayal from someone who should have provided protection and support. Mr. Porter Morrison suffers from complex post-traumatic stress disorder directly related to his brother's assault, Dr. Stone explained. He experiences panic attacks whenever he attempts to use his rescue inhaler because the device itself triggers memories of the attack and his brother's cruelty. My academic performance had plummeted following the barbecue incident, threatening my ability to complete my doctoral program and pursue the research career I had worked years to establish. The trauma had transformed my medical condition from a manageable health challenge into a constant reminder of vulnerability and family betrayal. Detective Kevin Park's expanded investigation revealed that Garrett's theft operations extended far beyond my medications to include a sophisticated network targeting multiple college campuses across Ohio. Several students had nearly died when their stolen medications were replaced with expired or counterfeit products purchased online. Mr. Morrison's organization was responsible for at least 12 serious medical emergencies, where students couldn't access their life-saving medications during critical moments, Detective Park testified. His actions endangered dozens of lives while generating substantial profits from others' medical necessities. The financial investigation uncovered evidence that Garrett had been using profits from medication theft to support gambling debts and drug purchases, explaining his desperate need for continued income from increasingly dangerous criminal activities. His addiction problems had escalated his willingness to risk others' lives for personal financial gain. My parents' final betrayal came during their testimony when they admitted under oath that they had known about Garrett's drug problems and theft activities, but had chosen to cover for him repeatedly rather than seek help or intervention. Their testimony revealed years of enabling behavior that had allowed his dangerous conduct to escalate unchecked. We thought if we just kept helping Garrett with his financial problems, he would eventually grow out of this difficult phase. Mom testified, avoiding eye contact with me throughout her time on the witness stand. We never imagined he would actually hurt Porter seriously. Their admission that they had used my college fund to pay Garrett's drug debts and legal expenses while lying to me about financial aid availability demonstrated their clear prioritization of his protection over my education and future. The family betrayal was complete and irreversible. Garrett's courtroom behavior became increasingly erratic as evidence mounted against him. Despite Morrison's repeated coaching about maintaining composure, he couldn't hide his arrogance and sense of entitlement. His smirks during victim testimony and obvious contempt for court proceedings worked against any possibility of jury sympathy. Judge Hernandez issued multiple warnings about his disruptive behavior, noting his eye rolling during serious medical testimony and his audible scoffing when witnesses described the severity of my injuries. His inability to show appropriate remorse or respect for the legal process reinforced the prosecution's arguments about his dangerous character. The community response to my case had grown into a national movement as asthma advocacy organizations rallied support and media coverage highlighted the broader issue of medical device theft and family abuse of disabled individuals. Fundraising campaigns helped replace my depleted educational resources while providing therapy and legal support. Messages of support arrived from across the country as other survivors of medical abuse shared their own stories of family betrayal and systematic endangerment. The collective response demonstrated that Garrett's actions represented a widespread problem requiring stronger legal protections and social awareness. During a court recess, Garrett made a desperate attempt to flee the courthouse while stealing emergency medical supplies from a court officer's first aid kit. His capture in the parking lot while trying to destroy evidence of additional medication thefts resulted in new charges and demonstrated his continued danger to public safety. Even while facing serious criminal charges, Mr. Morrison continued his pattern of stealing medical supplies and endangering others, the arresting officer testified. His actions showed complete disregard for the legal process and ongoing threat to anyone with medical vulnerabilities. The attempted escape and evidence destruction eliminated any remaining possibility of plea negotiations or reduced charges. Garrett's own actions had proven the prosecution's arguments about his incorrigible nature and potential for escalating violence against vulnerable individuals. Morrison's defense strategy collapsed completely as her client's behavior undermined every argument about his character, remorse, or potential for rehabilitation. The evidence of premeditation, ongoing criminal enterprise, and absolute lack of empathy left no room for mitigation or sympathy from the jury. Against the urgent advice of his attorney, Rachel Morrison, Garrett insisted on testifying in his own defense, convinced that his charm and intelligence could sway the jury in his favor. His decision to take the witness stand would prove to be the final nail in his legal coffin, revealing the full extent of his arrogance, cruelty, and complete lack of remorse. Morrison had spent hours coaching Garrett on appropriate responses and courtroom demeanor, but his narcissistic personality made it impossible for him to maintain the humble, apologetic facade she had carefully constructed. Within minutes of beginning his testimony, his true character began showing through. Porter has always been jealous of my athletic abilities and social success. Garrett testified, his voice confident and dismissive. He uses his medical condition as a crutch to get sympathy and special treatment that he doesn't deserve. The prosecution team exchanged glances as Garrett's testimony veered away from Morrison's prepared script and into dangerous territory. His inability to show genuine remorse or acknowledge wrongdoing was exactly what they had hoped for during their case preparation. Garrett's direct testimony included claims that I had deliberately provoked the barbecue incident by showing off my academic achievements and making him look inferior in front of family members. He suggested that his actions were a justified response to years of emotional abuse and family favoritism. Everyone always praised Porter for his research and academic success. Garrett continued his resentment, clearly visible, despite Morrison's attempts to signal him to tone down his rhetoric. Nobody ever recognized my accomplishments or acknowledged how hard it was to live in his shadow. His testimony revealed deep-seated psychological issues around competition and self-worth, but also demonstrated his fundamental belief that others' success justified his cruel retaliation. The jury listened with growing alarm as Garrett essentially confessed to viewing my near-death experience as appropriate punishment for academic achievement. The prosecution's cross-examination systematically exposed every lie, contradiction, and cruel motivation in Garrett's testimony. Lead prosecutor Sarah Chen had spent days preparing questions designed to reveal his true character and eliminate any possibility of jury sympathy. Mr. Morrison, you testified that you felt overshadowed by your brother's academic success. Chen began calmly. Did that feeling justify withholding life-saving medication from someone having a medical emergency? Porter needed to learn that he's not special. Garrett replied, his facade of reasonableness beginning to crack. He acts like his asthma makes him some kind of hero, but really it just makes him weak. So, in your opinion, people with medical conditions are weak and deserve to suffer. If they're going to use their conditions to get ahead in life, then yes, they should face consequences. Chen methodically walked Garrett through the evidence of premeditation, including his internet searches about asthma fatalities and his deliberate research into the timing of respiratory failure. Each question revealed more of his calculated planning and malicious intent. You researched how long someone could survive an asthma attack before it became fatal. Correct. I was just curious about Porter's condition. And you were curious about this information 3 weeks before the barbecue incident, where you withheld his medication. I don't remember the exact timing. Would it refresh your memory to see your browser history showing these searches on specific dates? As evidence mounted around his lies and premeditation, Garrett became increasingly agitated and defensive. His carefully constructed image of reasonable self-defense crumbled as the prosecution revealed his months of planning and his enjoyment of others' suffering. The climactic moment came when Chen played the video recording Emma had made of Garrett celebrating my hospitalization and bragging about his plans for future attacks. Watching himself on the courtroom monitors, Garrett's face flushed with embarrassment and rage. That video was taken out of context, he claimed desperately. I was drunk and just trying to impress people at a party. So when you said you hoped your brother would die so you could inherit everything that was just party talk. Porter has always been dramatic about his medical condition. I didn't think he was really in serious danger. Despite your research into asthma fatality rates and your deliberate withholding of his rescue medication during a severe attack, Garrett's answers became increasingly incoherent as he tried to explain away the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. His testimony revealed not just criminal behavior, but also a fundamental lack of human empathy that made him dangerous to anyone vulnerable. Victim impact statements from other survivors of Garrett's medication theft ring provided powerful testimony about the broader impact of his criminal enterprise. College students who had nearly died when their stolen insulin or EpiPens were replaced with counterfeit products shared their experiences with the jury. I went into diabetic shock because Garrett Morrison stole my insulin and replaced it with water, testified sophomore Jennifer Walsh. I spent 4 days in intensive care and nearly died because he wanted drug money. The community impact testimony included representatives from disability rights organizations and medical device manufacturers who explained how theft and deliberate withholding of medical equipment represented a growing threat to vulnerable populations nationwide. Porter's case had inspired proposed legislation nicknamed Porter's Law that would strengthen penalties for medical device theft and provide greater legal protections for individuals with disabilities who faced deliberate endangerment from family members or caregivers. Jury deliberation lasted only 6 hours, indicating the clear-cut nature of the evidence and the compelling testimony they had heard. Foreman Robert Martinez later explained that they spent most of their time reviewing the video evidence and Garrett's own admissions rather than debating his guilt or innocence. The defendant's own words and actions made this case straightforward, Martinez told reporters after the verdict. His complete lack of remorse and his obvious enjoyment of his brother's suffering left no doubt about his guilt on all charges. When Judge Hernandez read the guilty verdicts on all counts, including attempted murder, aggravated assault, medical device theft, and racketeering, Garrett's composure finally shattered completely. His face turned pale as the reality of his situation began penetrating his narcissistic delusions of immunity. The sentencing phase included additional testimony about Garrett's potential for rehabilitation and the appropriate punishment for his crimes. Expert witnesses explained that his personality disorders and complete lack of empathy made him unlikely to benefit from standard rehabilitation programs. Judge Hernandez delivered a harsh sentence that reflected both the severity of Garrett's crimes and his demonstrated potential for future violence against vulnerable individuals. 15 years in maximum security prison without possibility of parole for the first 8 years, with additional consecutive sentences for the theft ring and courtroom assault charges. Mr. Morrison, your actions represent a calculated and sustained attack on one of society's most vulnerable populations, Judge Hernandez declared during sentencing. Your complete lack of remorse and your expressed intention to continue harming disabled individuals makes you an ongoing danger to public safety. Upon hearing his sentence, Garrett's final mask of civility disappeared entirely. He lunged across the courtroom toward me, screaming threats and obscenities before being tackled by multiple bailiffs. His violent outburst in front of the judge and jury provided the final confirmation of the prosecution's arguments about his dangerous character. "I should have let you die," he screamed as officers restrained him. "You destroyed our family, you weak piece of garbage. This is all your fault." His courtroom attack resulted in additional charges and proved conclusively that he remained a threat to my safety and the safety of other vulnerable individuals. The incident was recorded by court cameras and later used in appeals to ensure he served his full sentence without early release. The months following Garrett's conviction and sentencing brought a mixture of relief healing and profound life changes that I could never have imagined during those terrifying moments at our family barbecue. The legal victory represented more than personal vindication. It had become a catalyst for broader social change and personal transformation that gave meaning to the trauma I had endured. Garrett's 15-year sentence in maximum security prison provided the safety and closure I needed to begin rebuilding my life without fear of retaliation or future attacks. Reports from the correctional facility indicated that he remained unrepentant and violent, frequently clashing with other inmates and prison staff, while maintaining his belief that he was the victim of an unjust legal system. Additional charges for assaulting fellow prisoners and attempting to organize medication theft schemes within the prison system ensured that he would serve his full sentence without possibility of early release. His continued dangerous behavior vindicated the judge's assessment of his character and confirmed that incarceration was necessary to protect society from his sociopathic tendencies. The permanent estrangement from my parents, while emotionally painful, ultimately proved liberating, as I learned to build relationships based on genuine care and mutual respect rather than biological obligation. Uncle Todd stepped fully into a paternal role, providing both emotional support and financial assistance that allowed me to complete my doctoral program without the crushing debt my parents' betrayal would have caused. Porter family isn't defined by genetics. Todd explained during one of our regular conversations at his new apartment in Cleveland, where he had relocated to be closer during my recovery. Real family consists of people who protect and support each other, especially during vulnerable moments. My relationship with Sarah deepened and strengthened as we navigated the challenges of trauma recovery together. Her medical knowledge and unwavering support during the legal proceedings proved invaluable, and her perspective as a healthcare professional helped me understand the broader implications of my case for disability rights and medical safety. The academic and professional opportunities that emerged from the media attention around my case exceeded anything I could have achieved through traditional channels. Dean Elizabeth Carter personally restored my full doctoral funding and provided additional research resources after learning how my parents had sabotaged my educational finances to protect Garrett. Mr. Morrison, your courage in pursuing justice despite family pressure demonstrates exactly the kind of character we want to support in future medical researchers, Dean Carter announced during a ceremony recognizing my contributions to respiratory therapy device innovation. My thesis research on backup emergency respiratory systems gained national attention and funding from major medical device manufacturers who recognized the commercial and humanitarian potential of my innovations. The irony that Garrett's attack had inspired life-saving technology that would protect countless others provided a sense of purpose and meaning to the suffering I had endured. Patent licensing for my emergency respiratory backup system generated enough income to ensure financial independence and fund continued research into medical device security and theft prevention. The technology incorporated features specifically designed to prevent tampering and unauthorized access by potential abusers. Dr. Susan Walsh, my trauma therapist specializing in family abuse recovery, helped me process the complex emotions around Garrett's conviction and my family's betrayal. Her expertise in cases involving medical abuse provided crucial support for developing healthy coping mechanisms and rebuilding trust in relationships. Porter, your decision to pursue justice despite intense family pressure probably saved other lives, Dr. Walsh observed during one of our sessions. Garrett's theft ring was expanding rapidly, and his escalating violence suggests he would have eventually killed someone if he hadn't been stopped. The community impact of my case extended far beyond legal precedent to inspire nationwide awareness campaigns about hidden medical abuse within families and institutions. Support groups formed for survivors of medical endangerment, while advocacy organizations used my story to push for stronger legal protections and better reporting mechanisms. Marcus Thompson, my new research partner and closest friend, brought a perspective shaped by his own experiences with disability, discrimination, and family rejection. Our collaboration on respiratory therapy innovations combined our different expertise areas while providing mutual support for navigating academic and social challenges. You turned the worst thing that ever happened to you into something that helps other people, Marcus observed as we reviewed preliminary test results for our latest device prototypes. That's the definition of transforming trauma into purpose. Local and national asthma advocacy organizations invited me to speak at conferences and awareness events where I shared my story and promoted the legal reforms inspired by my case. The speaking opportunities allowed me to connect with other survivors, while educating medical professionals and families about the signs and prevention of medical abuse. The passage of Porter's Law in Ohio, followed by similar legislation in 12 other states, established stronger penalties for medical device theft and provided enhanced legal protections for vulnerable individuals facing deliberate endangerment from family members or caregivers. The laws included provisions for emergency protective orders and specialized prosecution units trained in medical abuse cases. Professional success in the biomedical engineering field opened doors to consulting opportunities with hospitals and medical device companies seeking to improve security and access protocols for emergency medications. My expertise gained through traumatic personal experience provided unique insights into vulnerabilities that purely academic researchers might overlook. The financial settlements from civil lawsuits against Garrett and my parents provided additional resources for continuing research and supporting other survivors of medical abuse. Rather than seeking personal enrichment, I directed most of the funds toward scholarship programs for students with disabilities and research into abuse prevention technologies. Uncle Todd's decision to relocate permanently to Cleveland created the stable family relationship I had never experienced with my biological parents. His support network included his daughter Jessica, now a pre-med student, inspired by my case to pursue emergency medicine, creating new bonds that felt more genuine than anything I had known growing up. Standing before an audience of 1,200 medical professionals, advocates, and survivors at the National Asthma Conference in Denver, I delivered the keynote address that summarized my journey from victim to survivor to advocate. The standing ovation that followed represented validation not just for my personal courage, but for the broader principle that vulnerable individuals deserve protection from those who would exploit their medical conditions. 5 years ago, my own brother held my rescue inhaler above his head while I fought for every breath. I told the audience my voice strong and confident, despite the emotional weight of the memory. He sneered, already gasping loser, as my oxygen levels dropped to life-threatening levels. Today, his actions have inspired legal reforms, technological innovations, and awareness campaigns that protect countless others from similar abuse. The life lesson that emerged from this traumatic experience centered on the courage required to choose justice over family loyalty when safety is at stake, and the understanding that true family consists of those who protect rather than those who share genetics. My near-death experience had led not only to personal growth, but to systemic changes that would benefit vulnerable populations for generations to come. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the source of our greatest danger. I concluded my speech. But when we find the courage to speak truth and seek justice, we can transform our worst experiences into forces for positive change that extend far beyond our individual lives. The emotional satisfaction of seeing Garrett face consequences for his actions paled in comparison to the deeper fulfillment that came from using my experience to protect others and advance medical safety. Justice had been served not just through punishment, but through prevention education and systemic reform. My story resonated with millions of people who had faced similar betrayals from family members and inspired them to seek help, report abuse, and prioritize their own safety over maintaining toxic relationships. The courage to break silence about medical abuse within families created ripple effects that extended far beyond my individual case. Today, I wake up each morning in my research laboratory, surrounded by devices and innovations designed to protect vulnerable individuals from the kind of attack I survived. The work gives meaning to the suffering and transforms personal trauma into universal benefit. As I reflect on this journey from that terrifying moment when my own brother chose cruelty over compassion, I understand that surviving isn't just about physical recovery, but about choosing to grow stronger, wiser, and more committed to protecting others who face similar vulnerabilities. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right, even when that choice came with enormous personal cost? I'd love to hear your thoughts about standing up for justice when it means confronting people we're supposed to love and trust. Please share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming adversity, and share it with others who might find hope in learning that justice and healing are possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening to my story, and for being part of a community that believes vulnerable individuals deserve protection and respect. I hope my experience can help others find the courage to speak up and seek the help they deserve.